Picture this. It's 1990 and you've just graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Musicology at the Osaka University of Arts. You secure a job straight away at Nintendo as a composer in their research and development team. Your task? Help drive innovation and lead the way forward in gaming technology. Nintendo's brand new console, Super Famicom, just released in Japan, and the company is obsessed with one thing: the future. You are Hajime Hirasawa, and you're about to write music for Nintendo's biggest breakthrough in gaming technology up to that point, Star Fox. But how do you match that ambition? The soundtrack needs to feel futuristic, huge, grand, and with hardware limitations, you know it's going to be a difficult task. This is why the music in Star Fox feels unlike any other Nintendo series. So, the FX chip was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, a new leap in technology. The staff chosen to work on the game were going to need to suit that goal. While they assigned the scripting portion of the game to a third-party studio, Argonaut, Nintendo was given the job of designing the game. The team was filled with well-known Nintendo veterans Shigeru Miyamoto, Katsuya Iguchi, Yoichi Yamada, Tsuyoshi Watanabe, Takaya Imamura, and the outlier Hajime Hirasawa, who was chosen to compose the soundtrack over well-established Koji Kondo. If you somehow didn't know this, Koji Kondo is like the golden standard in Japanese video game composers, alongside others like Nobuo Uematsu or Yoko Shimomura. Up to this point in his career, he had written music for the entire Super Mario and Legend of Zelda series, both being heavy hitters for the game developer. Moving Kondo to a minor role on Star Fox would be a calculated risk by Nintendo. After being hired at Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development, a Nintendo R&D team, Hajime Hirasawa gained experience writing the soundtracks for Time Twist, Rikishi no Karasumi Day, and Super Scope 6, the former being a Famicom Disk System game, and the latter being a minigame collection exploring the technical abilities of the Super Scope 6 light gun. When Nintendo began looking for a composer, Hirasawa's recorded history with the company up to this point became a large factor in the decision. During his time at Osaka University of Arts, Hajime Hirasawa would develop his skills by collaborating with a close-knit art and music department. He mentions in an Illuminati interview that while experimenting with new technology, quote, "More than anything, I had the feeling that I wanted to go out and do something new, and I enjoyed taking on challenges." Still, he was classically trained, all the while mentioning his eventual passion would be turning these ideas into business ventures. Developer commentary on Star Fox revealed that Hajime Hirasawa's style was based on traditional composer values as well as intending to properly take credit for his work.
Yeah, the musician, he quit Nintendo afterwards because he was a traditional musician and it was really good, and then he got into an argument with Nintendo about it because he wanted to sell it and because he put the effort in to do it, and Nintendo was just like, sorry.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Listening to the soundtrack, you can hear these influences, whether it's the by-the-book orchestral scores or the modern and experimental synth-pop music and tracks. Other Nintendo IPs such as F-Zero had a different composer assigned to them. Yumiku Kanki was a composer who worked at Nintendo during the same period as Hajime Hirasawa from 1987 through to 2006. According to her portfolio, she also happened to be assigned work on Super Scope 6, meaning that she would have been with the R&D team around the same time. Another strange tie into the story is her role given to write music for the cancelled Star Fox sequel, Star Fox 2. Soyo Oka was in the exact same boat. From 1988 to 1994, she was hired to work as composer for brand new IPs such as Ice Hockey, Pilot Wings, and Super Mario Kart. Yes, that Super Mario Kart. To tell the truth, there's a massive list of composers that have worked for Nintendo for various reasons, but the pattern shows that Nintendo tends to freshen up the sound of experimental games by hiring new talent. Games I'd listed like the previous Pilot Wings, Super Mario Kart, and even F-Zero are known for being some of the first games to use the brand new Mode 7 graphics, a pseudo 3D effect that the SNES could produce. Remarkably, like the next leap in the graphics technology, the Super FX chip. While it might seem like Nintendo was simply preserving resources by not choosing their star composer, Koji Kondo, in many ways, Hajime Hirasawa was the musical equivalent of the Super FX chip, unproven, experimental, and chosen specifically to push Nintendo into unfamiliar territory. So, now you've got a composer. How do you meet that goal? Reference. Star Fox as an idea didn't just appear in an instant. Like many things in the creative process, it takes a mix of different influences. During a developer interview online, Shigeru Miyamoto states in relation to character design, quote, "I wanted something like Star Wars but set in the puppet show-like setting of Thunderbirds." Take a listen to the intro theme of Thunderbirds. Compared to the theme of Star Fox, the similarities are noticeable. Both use the element of marching snares. The timpani rolls in both are identical. The orchestral hits in the opening portions are similar as well. All of these are common motifs of 60s style composition and arrangement. I would no doubt believe that this was done intentionally to give the feeling of booting up your copy of Star Fox a more filmic touch with 60s action fantasy. Ironically, Sega, Nintendo's #1 competitor at this point, already had the idea of a flight shooter a few years earlier in 1987. Afterburner 2 was an arcade rail shooter, and while not true 3D, it plays very similar to what Star Fox would become. Take a listen to the theme Afterburner in the game, then listen to Corneria. While there are not any interviews online directly confirming the inspiration, the similarities in the game's style are worth being looked at as plausible evidence. Continuing further, the main inspiration for Afterburner 2 was in fact Top Gun, according to multiple Sega employees in the developer interview. Quote, "The movie Top Gun was really popular at the time, so we had no trouble at all deciding our next game. Hiroshi Kawaguchi, composer at Sega working on Afterburner. When playing the game for the first time, Corneria immediately screamed to me, 80s Top Gun. Things were flying past the screen, dogfights would happen with teammates, and that signature of the late 80s orchestra hit sample brought images of big hair and over-the-top personalities of the era. The FX chip was marketed as the next step in video game realism. Things were becoming more realistic, akin to a movie. By choosing to reference big Hollywood productions, Nintendo's sound team had a solid target to aim for. Now that Hajime Hirasawa's compositions are written, and along with the other developers happily agreeing that it's a fantastic fit, they needed to get into the game. An entirely different beast on its own. Pulling the console apart to look at the limitations given, it is immediately obvious why. The Super Famicom, when it released, was a big step from the previous generations of hardware. So, when Nintendo upgraded to the new SSMP audio subsystem chip, it allowed game developers to achieve more sounds at once with a larger capacity of CD quality samples. Still, these sounds were required to be lowered in bitrate, and you could only realistically get away with about 2 to 3 seconds of sample time per sound due to the measly 512 kilobytes of RAM. Keeping in mind that the game would need to have sound effects which convey important feedback to the player, Hirasawa would need to find a way to share the RAM. Often, composers will set limitations for how many channels are needed in a soundtrack. Then, reserve 3 or 4 for explosions, beeps, bloops, whatever the gameplay needs, using the rest for music. Hirasawa states in a developer interview that this alone was one of the most difficult tasks he was given. How do you manage to fit an orchestra intended to be played by dozens of musicians into those restrictions, with intentional arrangement? Take the fluff and get rid of it. An example of this workflow can be demonstrated by the orchestra suite of Dragon Quest I recorded in 1986. And this is what it sounds like squashed into the limitations of the SNES hardware. During this era of video gaming, consoles acted more like sequencers. Resources at the time could only allow tiny amounts of data stored on the console at a time, so no large recordings of full soundtracks, even if compressed, could fit on the console. Rather, in small samples of audio, and in some cases synthesized sounds from a separate chip, would be used in combination to perform the music live while you play. In other words, the game console is like a synthesizer, and it is programmed to play the notes needed simultaneously while the game runs. It was not until the mid to late 90s before CDs, a medium that had enough storage to store full songs, would begin to be used in the games industry. All of this is to say, although the SNES was considered one of the most advanced home video game consoles when it released, there were certainly limitations that carved a certain characteristic into the sound of its games, Star Fox not being an exception, of course. It's not as bad as it seems, however. Artists can use limitations to breed creativity, allowing innovative ideas to sprout. That classic SNES sound is something incredibly recognizable, making it stand out against the competition. Even today, the SNES sounds like the SNES. And the nostalgia of it is something that lives in the hearts of millions of gamers that grew up with it in the 90s. Star Fox for the SNES has a signature sound to it. It mixes your traditional orchestra with standard late 80s to early 90s pop rock arrangement. To simplify things without going into too much theory, I am going to categorize the game's soundtrack into 3 distinct types: orchestral, band, and ambient tracks. First, the orchestral music. This style is used when the game needs to feel touching, leaning hard into a lush arrangement of strings and horns. Main theme is a notable example of this. There is sparse percussion. This is to help with allowing the other instruments to breathe as percussion tends to obscure. This technique also creates a larger contrast, so when cymbals crash in, it hits harder than ever. Lulling you into a sense of grandiose, the horns and strings play both melody and harmony. It is symbolic of the expanse of space. Occasionally there is an asteroid or a planet, but you're going to be traveling in the beauty of it all without much worry. In fact, it could have been written to evoke a feeling of patriotism, a sense of military duty. The arrangement is comparable to a national anthem of sorts. This orchestral style applies to most set pieces in the game, such as Course Clear, Game Clear Demonstration, Andros, Title Screen, and Course Map Select. This style conveys significance and is used as the primary emotional carrier for the entire soundtrack. When done right, it can draw real emotion from the player with genuine tears or a visual spine chill. Band music carries a significant half of the game, consisting of rock drums, guitars, rolling basses, and tons upon tons of keyboard sounds. Corneria is a fantastic example of this for this category, with it being one of, if not one of the most iconic pieces in the game. This time you are pushed into the action with 4-on-the-floor kicks and a snare, setting the listener in the direction they need to go. Bass is playing 16ths, which is a steady groove to keep them marching forward. Under the song carrying that catchy riff is an iconic orchestra hit sample that every keyboard rompler in the era had. And the power chords from an electric guitar can be heard supporting the harmony, talking back and forth with calm response, like the way the player is constantly dodging returning fire. There is no time for thinking, only acting. It is a perfect way to throw you into the action for the first time, allowing you to feel like an elusive yet overpowered fighter pilot flying through dangers at Mach speed. It is a direct opposite of the orchestral style, relying on heavy rhythm, overdriving distortion, and stabbing keyboards. Here we have Titania, Fortuna, Macbeth, and Meteor, as well as the corresponding boss battles, which are often more intense versions of the planet themes. This style is fantastic for raising the energy and pace of the game, as it is used on all of the main planets. And that way it complements the main gameplay loop perfectly. Then there's Ambient, which is labeled so due to the more hollowed and introspective sound they convey. Tracks such as Continue or Black Hole are used in the game during out-of-place moments. These work by using the idea of loudness and silence. It is a break from the heavy arrangement of the other styles, conveying an otherworldly feel while signaling a change of pace. Again, it fits the outer space motif in the game, floating around with no grounding for you to stand on. The track that symbolizes the category must go to Controls. I listened to this track for the first time while doing research, and the feeling I got when I opened the game to this was interesting. I never played this game as a kid, but the sense of faux nostalgia I got immediately had me staying on the control screen for longer than I would like to admit. The way it's arranged brings a lullaby sort of sound, which fits this section well. You are starting to learn the game. It's like the game is holding your hand while you learn to walk. For a first-time listener, this comfort is what you need to keep them from feeling overwhelmed in the first moments of control. I want to quote someone in the YouTube comments under the song, as it really speaks to the emotional impact this would have had on someone experiencing Star Fox for the first time. Quote, "There are no words to describe my love for this piece. This game was THE game for me. My very first video game that I ever owned, and the game that started me on the path to a life of loving video games. Sometimes I would turn on my Super Nintendo just to let this music play, and I would fall asleep to it." End quote. And that's beautiful to hear, because my childhood games had the exact same impact on me. In fact, if it was not for those soundtracks, I might not have been interested in music in the first place. The fact that this piece can evoke those deep, indescribable feelings within us is incredibly fascinating and should be appreciated. Finally, in 1993, just 3 years after the Super Famicom was released, Star Fox was finally given its grand reveal, allowing millions of players to pick up their controllers and experience true 3D at home. While it's often remembered for its technical achievement, the Super FX era represented something more specific in hindsight, a moment where hardware limitations directly shaped artistic identity. It was not designed in isolation, but rather pushed by those constraints. In doing so, it helped define the sound of Star Fox. Over 30 years later, the sound of Star Fox remains as iconic as ever. Hey guys, I appreciate y'all for watching. I appreciate Matt here for letting me record in his studio, Aventine Studios. If you guys have any mixing or mastering that you need to do, I'll have them down in the description. These are great people. I enjoy coming here and working. If you guys want to see more videos like this, just let me know. Remember to like and to subscribe, and yeah, y'all have a great day. Appreciate it. Thank you for listening.